The wind screamed across the frozen land. It was a white world, full of snow and ice. Mountains stood like sleeping giants, covered in frost. The air was sharp, and the sky was a dull gray. In the middle of this endless cold was a small cave inside. A mother held her baby close to her chest. Her name was Lyra, and she was the last of her kind. Her skin was pale blue, her eyes full of sorrow. Her baby, barely a few days old, was very sick. The child's breathing was weak, her little body shivered. Even under layers of cloth and animal skin, Lyra sang a soft lullaby, her voice trembling but full of love. It was an old song, one passed down through generations of her people. The melody was slow and sad. It spoke of stars and flowers, of peace and warmth. Things that no longer existed on this frozen planet. Lyra knew this might be the last time she ever sang it. The baby didn't move much. Only a faint twitch of her hand. Tears slid down Lyra's cheeks and turned into ice. She gently kissed her baby's forehead and kept singing. The wind outside howled louder. As if it was listening to the song, Lyra looked outside the cave. Snow flew like knives, sharp and fast. She knew no one was coming. There were no other survivors. Not anymore. Her people were gone, and the humans, the strange ones from the stars, had left long ago. Still, she sang, her voice softer now. Her lips were turning blue from the cold. She wrapped her baby tighter, giving her own body warmth. Her breath came slow, heavy, but she did not stop. Then something strange happened. A shadow moved in the snow. Far away, Lyra blinked, thinking her eyes were playing tricks, but the shadow moved again. Closer this time, a tall figure. Walking through the storm, she stopped singing, holding her breath. The baby let out a tiny whimper. The figure came closer, step by step, wrapped in thick, dark armor and a glowing face mask. It was not one of her people, not a creature of the cold. It was something else, a human. Lyra had only heard of them in old stories. They were strong, clever, and strange, but they had left this world long ago. Why would one be here now? The human stepped into the cave entrance and paused. Snow clung to his armor, melting from the cave's slight warmth. He looked at Lyra, then at the baby. Lyra was afraid, but too weak to move. Her arms tightened around her child. If this was death, she would face it with her baby in her arms. The human removed his mask, a young face with tired eyes and a kind look. He knelt down slowly, hands open to show he meant no harm. "I heard the song," he said softly. Lyra did not understand all the words, but she felt the meaning in his voice. The human looked at the baby and reached into a small pack. He pulled out a round device that beeped and flashed green. He placed it gently near the baby, and it made a soft humming sound. The child's breathing became a little stronger. Lyra gasped, hope lighting in her chest for the first time in days. The human spoke again, pointing to himself. "My name is Kale?" He then pointed at her, asking a question without words. Lyra barely whispered, "Lyra." Kale smiled, then opened a bag and took out something warm and steaming. He offered it to her. It smelled like soup. She took a sip, feeling warmth spread through her body. He looked around the cave and began to set up strange objects, small lights, a heater, a tent that unfolded like magic. The cold slowly faded, just a little. Lyra stared in silence, too tired to speak, but inside, her heart began to beat with something new. Hope. She looked at her baby. Her eyes were still closed, but her chest moved gently now, not strong, but steady. The lullaby had brought someone. A human had stepped through the storm. Maybe the stars had not forgotten her people after all. Maybe, just maybe, the song was heard, and it had brought a savior through the blizzard. The cave no longer felt like a grave. The soft glow from the human's equipment gave it life. Warmth flowed in waves, like something from another world. Lyra sat near the edge, her baby wrapped. In warm layers beside her, the human Kale worked with quiet hands. He placed strange tools on the ground. One by one, a small round box began to hum, releasing warm air. Another device showed blinking lights and numbers. Lyra could not read it, but the rhythm felt calming. She watched his hands, steady and sure, so different from the wild, shaking. Winds outside, Kale looked at her baby again. He gently touched the side of the small scanner. The screen showed a red warning. Kale's eyes narrowed, and he gave a quiet sigh, too cold for her lungs. He whispered, more to himself. She needs treatment in less than 12 hours. Lyra could not understand the words, but she understood his face, worry, and something else, determination. Kale reached into his pack and took out a glowing capsule. He broke it open, and a warm mist rose. He held it close to the child's face. Her breath became clearer. Not perfect, but stronger. Lyra gasped again, tears coming to her eyes. She touched Kale's hand without thinking. Her skin cold, his warm, two worlds meeting. In that moment, outside, the wind screamed again, louder now. It shook the cave's entrance like angry hands. Kale stood up quickly and stared into the snow. His hand went to a metal stick at his side, a weapon. Maybe. Lyra watched him closely, heart pounding. He took a few slow steps toward the cave. Mouth, then stopped. He turned to Lyra, eyes sharp but calm. You hear that? He asked. Lyra tilted her head. There was something inside the wind, something strange. She could hear her own voice singing, the lullaby. But far away, outside her. Eyes widened. She looked down at her baby, silent, sleeping. Then, who was singing? She started to rise, but Kale stepped between her and the cave mouth. His hand lifted slightly, not to stop her by force, but to warn. No, he said firmly. That's not real. Lyra pointed outside, confused and afraid. Kale took a small orb from his belt and tossed it into the snow. It hovered, spinning, and projected sound. The lullaby echoed back, exactly the same. He turned back to her, voice low. They're called whispers. He said, storm-born things. They copy voices to trick survivors. They're not alive. Not dead. But they hunt sound. Lyra's blood ran cold. She clutched her child. Tighter, her own voice, used as a weapon. Her song turned into a trap. Kale sealed the cave entrance with a heat shield. The howling faded, muffled now. He sat beside Lyra. Setting the weapon on the floor, I've seen them before, he said. On another ice world, they took my partner. His voice cracked for just a second. Then he went quiet. The heater between them buzzed softly. Outside, the storm moved like a living thing. Lyra looked at the man again. She did not know what kind of people humans were, but this one, he had risked death to help her child. He had brought light to her darkness. Why? She asked, voice weak. Kale looked up, surprised. He understood the word. Even through her broken accent, he hesitated, then smiled sadly. Because, he said, no baby should die alone. The words hit deep. Lyra blinked fast, holding her. Baby clothes. The child's skin felt warmer now. Not healed, but no longer fading. Kale stood again and checked a screen on his wrist. A blinking red dot, pulsing slowly. He frowned, then nodded to himself. There's a supply ship, he said. Crash landed 30 clicks from here. It has a med pod. Lyra didn't understand. But she saw the urgency in his eyes. He picked up his gear and began packing. Then looked at her, offering a thermal blanket. He motioned to her walk. Move, survive. She nodded slowly. Weak, but willing. She had come this far. She would go farther for her baby. Kale looked outside once more. The storm was still thick, but now he was not alone. The alien mother and her child would walk beside him. He didn't know if the whispers would follow. He didn't care. He was human, and humans walked into storms when others could not. The wind was no longer just wind. It moved like it was alive. It twisted around them as they stepped into the blizzard. The snow fell sideways, sharp as glass. Lyra held her baby close to her chest, hidden under a thick wrap. Cale walked in front, his shoulders broad, his eyes scanning everything. Each step was slow, careful. The frozen ground cracked under their boots. They moved in silence, not by choice, but by fear. Cale had warned her. "Don't speak out here," he said. "The storm listens." Lyra nodded once, eyes wide. She was already cold. But now, a new kind of chill crept into her bones. Not from the weather, from the feeling that something unseen was near. Cale checked a glowing map on his wrist. The route to the crashed supply ship curved through a narrow ice valley. They had to go through it. There was no other way. No caves, no shelter, just a long path between high frozen walls the baby made. A soft noise, a tiny cough. Lyra stopped, heart pounding. Cale turned quickly. He gave her a warning look, then slowly knelt. He opened a pouch and took out a small cube. He pressed it to the baby's wrap, and a soft warmth spread out. The baby relaxed again, her breath steady. Cale gave a small nod, then stood. They kept moving, but then something strange happened. A sound, soft but clear, came through the snow. A voice, a woman's voice. "Help me," it whispered. Lyra stopped cold. It was her own voice. She looked to Cale. Fear rising in her throat. He didn't turn, but raised one finger. Wait, another. Voice came deeper this time. A man's voice, full of panic. "Please, don't leave me here." Cale turned slowly, his face pale, lips pressed in a hard line. "That's my partner's voice," he said quietly. "She died months ago." The wind howled louder. Then the voices started to mix, hundreds of them, crying, laughing, singing. Some were human, some not, but they all sounded like someone you knew. Lyra shut her eyes, pressed her baby tighter. She felt her own name whispered in her ear. Over and over. The wind had ears, and now it had voices. Suddenly, Cale raised his arm. He pointed ahead, shadows moving in the storm. Figures, tall and thin, their bodies made of ice and wind, eyes like blue fire, mouths open, but they didn't speak. They only echoed. One of them stepped forward. It looked like Lyra. Same face, same eyes, but wrong. Its body shifted, flickered like a bad signal. It opened its mouth, and her lullaby came out. Cale aimed his weapon. "Don't listen," he shouted. "Don't believe them." He fired a bright beam of light, struck the creature. It screamed, but not in pain. It screamed with the voices of many, like a choir of ghosts. Then it exploded into mist. The other shadows scattered, but more came from behind. The valley was filling with them, each one a memory, a sound, a trick. Cale grabbed Lyra's arm. "Run," he said. "This way." They dashed across the ice. The baby held tight between them. The storm twisted louder. Lyra felt her own thoughts slipping. She heard her mother's voice, her father's laugh, old voices she hadn't heard in years. The wind was digging into her mind. Cale threw down another orb. This one released a loud pulse. A burst of white noise pushed the whispers back. It gave them 10 seconds, not more. They reached a frozen rock ledge and hid behind it. Cale pushed a button on his wrist. A dome of light formed around them. Temporary protection. Both of them were breathing hard. The baby was still, but alive. Lyra looked at Cale. "What are they?" she asked softly. He looked at the storm, his voice low and tight. "They're what's left behind when people die with pain. memories that never find peace. This planet collects them. Lyra's eyes widened. She had known this. World was dead, but she had not known it was haunted. Kale stared out into the snow. "We're not just fighting cold," he said. "We're fighting everything the cold remembers." The storm shrieked. The whispers were angry now. They would not stop. Lyra reached for her baby and began to hum again. A softer version of the lullaby, not to call for help, but to hold on. To herself, Kale didn't stop her this time. He just listened. And in that small circle of light, they waited, not broken, not lost, not yet. The light dome flickered. Its glow was fading with each passing minute outside. The storm still roared like a living beast. The whispers circled in the snow, their shapes dancing like smoke. Inside the barrier, Kale checked the power cell. 5 minutes, he said. Voice flat. Then we move. Lyra nodded, holding her baby close. The child was warm, but her breath was still shallow. The heat pod wrapped around her was dimming too. Kale opened his satchel and pulled out a folded map. He tapped a blinking dot, then pointed. "There's a place," he said. "A forest, frozen trees, but less wind, more cover, fewer." Whispers. Lyra had never been there. Her people didn't go near the forest. They said it was cursed, full of silent watchers. But now she had no choice. The dome blinked again, a final warning. Kale packed his tools fast, grabbed his rifle, and looked at Lyra. "Stay close," he said. "Don't speak unless it's real." They stepped into the storm once more. This time, the whispers didn't speak. They watched from cracks in the ice, from holes in the snow. They followed, but did not attack. Kale moved fast, using the slope of the valley to guide them. The land shifted slowly, snow becoming thinner. Ahead, dark shapes rose in the fog, tall and sharp. The frozen forest trees stood like statues, their branches thick with glass-like ice. Leaves had long since died, replaced by crystal webs. When the wind touched them, they chimed soft, hollow music. The sound was not unpleasant, but it felt wrong, too perfect, too empty. Lyra stepped carefully. Each branch she passed seemed to whisper without words. Kale scanned the area. "No movement," he said. "But we're not alone." They walked deeper into the trees. The forest muffled. All sound, even the wind, was quiet here. Their boots crunched snow with eerie loudness. The deeper they went, the more the forest closed in. The trees leaned slightly inward, like they were listening. They came to a clearing. In the center stood a large frozen tree. Its trunk was black ice, its branches silver like bone. Carvings covered the base, old symbols, alien, but not hers. Kale stopped and stared at them. "Human letters," he muttered. He reached out and touched one of the marks. The tree responded, a hum, low and deep. The carvings lit up in pale blue. Lyra stepped back, alarmed. "What is it?" she asked. "A marker," Kale said. "Old colony signal used to keep people away." "Why?" Kale didn't answer at first. Then he looked at her with tired eyes. "Because something lives here." Suddenly, the trees behind them shifted. Not from wind, but movement. Shadows darted between trunks. Not whispers. Something solid. Kale pulled Lyra behind him. He aimed his rifle and turned slowly. Shapes appeared from the trees. Humanoid, but wrong. Their skin was cracked. Faces frozen in place. Eyes glowed dim blue. Their mouths locked open in silent scream. "They're not dead," Kale said. "Not fully." The figures stepped closer. Their feet made no sound on the snow. Their movements were jerky, like puppets. One reached out a hand. Skin peeled and blackened. It pointed at the baby, then made a grabbing motion. Kale raised his weapon. "Don't," he said, voice low but firm. Another creature spoke, its voice dry, breaking. "Give." The warmth, Lyra pulled her baby tighter. She didn't need translation. They wanted her child. Not to hurt, to feed. These beings were frozen colonists, humans who didn't die, but didn't live, kept in the forest by something ancient. Their minds were gone, only hunger left. The tree in the center cracked. A low moan came from its trunk. Something inside it was waking. Kale made a decision. He fired at the ground near the frozen figures. The explosion shook the snow from the trees. Lyra ran with him into the deeper part of the forest, behind them. The tree screamed, a high-pitched sound like metal tearing. The creatures did not chase, but the sound followed. Lyra's breath came fast. She looked back once. The carvings on the tree had changed. Now they looked like open mouths. Kale kept going until they reached a cave under thick roots. They slipped inside, lit a heat light, both of them shaking. What was that? Lyra whispered. Kale stared at the roots above. A trap, he said. A place made to feed on warmth. On memory. It doesn't want to kill. It wants to keep. The baby stirred. Still alive, still fighting. They were not safe. But they had escaped. For now, the roots above their heads creaked. It sounded like bones shifting in a deep grave. Kale didn't sleep. Lyra couldn't. The baby rested in her arms, warm but weak. The cave under the roots gave them a moment of quiet, but it didn't feel safe. It felt watched, as if the forest had eyes under the ground too. Kale checked his scanner. It blinked red. Something was moving nearby. Not whispers, not storm winds, something heavier, slower. Lyra whispered, "Is it them?" Kale shook his head. "No," he said. "This is different." Suddenly, the scanner went black. A shadow passed the cave entrance, then another. Kale raised his weapon and crouched. Lyra covered her baby's head. The entrance darkened. 3 figures stepped inside. At first, they looked human. Armor, boots, helmets, all worn and cracked. But their movements were too smooth, too perfect. One of them spoke, not with a voice, but with a sound in their minds. It was cold and hollow, like wind blowing through a shell. "Is that a child?" Lyra pulled back, her hands shaking. Kale aimed his weapon. "Step away," he said. The figure tilted its head. "You should not be here," it said. "No warmth belongs in this place." Kale narrowed his eyes. "You're not survivors. We were," the figure said. "Long ago, the other two removed their helmets." Their faces were pale, too smooth, almost plastic. No eyes, just empty sockets. No mouths, just skin stretched tight. They were hollow, empty bodies filled with something else, not alive, but not completely dead. "We stayed too long," one said. "The cold kept us, shaped us." Lyra stepped back, her foot slipping on ice. The sound echoed, and the baby stirred instantly. All 3 hollow ones turned toward the child, their heads moving in unison. "The last spark," they said together. "The flame must go out." Kale fired first. Sharp blue beam hit the lead figure. It staggered, but didn't fall. The others rushed forward. Silent and fast, Kale threw a smoke bomb. The cave filled with white clouds. He grabbed Lyra's arm and pulled her toward the back wall. There was a crack, just wide enough. "Go!" he shouted. Lyra squeezed through with her baby. Kale followed. Blasting the wall behind them, rocks tumbled down, blocking the way. They ran into darkness. Kale's light blinked on. They were in an old mining tunnel, one built by humans long ago. Lyra gasped, out of breath. Who were they? Kale didn't look back. "They were explorers," he said. "Trapped by the storm, they tried to live here. But the planet doesn't let you live." The tunnel stretched on, deeper and darker. Every few meters, lights flickered. On old walls, signs written in human letters. "Keep moving. Heat zones ahead. no turning back. Eventually, they found a room with metal walls. Inside was an old power node. Half frozen, Kale scanned it, still working. He said, surprised, enough to charge the med pod. He placed the baby into a heated capsule. It glowed softly, the baby's breathing became stronger. Lyra covered her mouth, silent tears falling. She had almost lost her again. Kale sat against the wall, rifle across his lap. They're still. Out there, he said, they don't die. Lyra sat beside him. Why do they want her? She asked. They don't want her, he replied. They want what's inside her. What? Warmth, Kale said. Life, she still burns. Lyra looked at her child. The only fire left in a world of frost, the hollow ones were drawn to. It, like insects to light. Kale stood, listening. Far behind them, metal groaned. They were coming, not running, not chasing, just walking, slow and endless. They won't stop, Kale said. They never do. He looked at the baby, then at Lyra. Only one way out now. What is it? She asked. Afraid? There's a human ship, he said. Crashed years ago. Still has one working escape pod. Enough room for one adult and a baby. Lyra's heart dropped. What about you? Kale looked at the tunnel entrance. Then smiled, tired but strong. I'll buy time, he said. That's what humans do. Lyra shook her head. No, we stay together. Kale placed a hand on her shoulder. Your child is the last spark, he said. You know it? The ground trembled slightly. The hollow ones were near. Kale picked up the baby's pod. Come on, he said. Let's get her out first. Lyra followed, her legs weak, but her will stronger. Behind them, the hollow ones marched like a slow storm, but ahead there was still a chance. A small ship, a bright flame, and the will to protect it. Asterisk, the cold was not just outside now. It had started to enter the bones, the blood. Even the light from Kale's gear seemed dimmer, as if the storm itself was eating away at every source of warmth. They moved quickly through the narrow tunnels. Kale's scanner beeped louder with each step. The signal was close, the ship was near. A small crash site, buried long ago under snow and time. Lyra followed behind him, her baby in the warm pod cradled in her arms. She had stopped feeling her fingers, but she didn't stop walking. Kale didn't speak much. He was focused, eyes scanning every shadow, every sound. Finally, they reached a metal wall, frozen solid, half covered in ice. It looked like part of an old transport ship. The metal was cracked, and the doors were sealed shut. Kale placed his hand on a small panel. It lit up, then blinked red. Manual entry, he said. Old system. He pulled out a small plasma torch and began cutting through the ice. Each slice made the air hiss, steam rising like smoke from a fire. Lyra looked behind them. The tunnel was empty, but she could feel the hollow ones getting closer. Their silence was louder than footsteps. The door broke open with a groan. Kale stepped inside first, then helped Lyra through. The inside of the ship was dark, but dry, seats torn, wires hanging, old blood dried into the walls. Everyone died here. Lyra whispered. Kale nodded slowly. Long time ago, they moved. To the back, where the emergency pods were kept, 3 capsules stood in the chamber. 2 broken, shattered from the crash. 1 still intact, covered in dust and frost. Kale scanned it. Still works, he said. 1 launch left. He placed the baby's pod inside the capsule. The system came alive, lights blinking. Engines humming low. It was ready. Lyra looked at the pod. Then, at Kale, you go too, she said. He shook his head. There's only enough power for 1 adult. He replied, I knew that when I brought you here. She stepped forward, panic in her eyes. No. You can't stay, Kale smiled. A soft, tired smile. I can and I will, he said. This baby has a future. I had mine. Lyra grabbed his arm. You saved her, she said, voice cracking. You don't have to die. He looked down at her hand. I'm not dying, he said. I'm giving her a chance. The ground vibrated. A soft rumble beneath their feet. The hollow ones were close, too close. Kale stepped back and began sealing the pod. The baby stirred inside, her breath calm, skin glowing softly from the heat. She was alive. Lyra fell to her knees, tears slipping down her face, not from fear, but from something deeper, grief and gratitude. She pressed her forehead to the capsule, whispering her daughter's name, then looked up at Kale one last time. Sing to her, she said. Kale nodded. He pressed the launch button. The pod's door closed slowly. Sealing the baby inside, a countdown began. Quiet and steady. Lyra stood and moved to the window. The launch tube pointed toward the upper cliff. Face, when the engines ignited, the snow would break and the pod would rise. A small spark into the sky. Kale stepped beside her, from the tunnel. Soft voices echoed. Not real voices, echoes of people they had lost. I'll hold them back. He said, you stay until the launch. She nodded. And then something neither of them expected. The baby began to cry, a soft, high-pitched sound. Not from fear, but from instinct. Lyra began to sing the lullaby. Again, one last time, the capsule responded. The lights inside glowing in. Rhythm, Kale smiled. That song, he said, it's strong. The countdown reached 0. A low rumble, then fire. The escape pod shot up through the old launch chute, breaking ice and snow as it soared into the sky. Lyra watched it rise. Watched the flame disappear into the clouds. Then she turned to Kale. He was standing with his rifle ready. The hollow ones had entered the ship, dozens of them, their faces blank, their hands reaching. Kale looked back once. Time to go, he said. Lyra didn't argue. She followed the emergency shaft toward a side exit. Her baby was gone safe, far away. Now only 2 things remained behind: the blizzard, and the man who walked into it without fear. The pod vanished into the clouds, a trail of heat and fire behind it. Then the sky swallowed it whole, and it was gone. Lyra stood in silence, staring up. Her hands still trembling. Her child was safe, high above the storm, beyond the reach of cold hands and hungry shadows. But below, the storm was closing in, behind her. The ship shuddered, metal groaned, lights flickered, and the hollow ones stepped inside. They moved slowly, like dancers in a silent play. Each step was careful, almost respectful, as if they knew what Kale had done, as if they had seen it before. Kale stood in the middle of the ruined ship, his coat flapping gently from the air vents. His rifle charged and ready. He knew he wouldn't win, but winning wasn't the plan. Buying time was. He turned his head slightly. Lyra stood near the side exit, her hand on the emergency lever. Their eyes met for the last time. Kale gave her a small nod. She gave him a smaller one back. Then she ran. The door sealed behind her. Kale took a deep breath. He listened, not to the creatures in front of him, not to the metal screaming around them, but to the sound still echoing in his ears. The lullaby, the baby's cry, Lyra's voice, the warmth of a dying song. The hollow ones formed a half circle. Their leader stepped forward, a tall one, wearing the remains of a command uniform. The skin on its face was cracked like dry earth, but it still held the shape of someone who once smiled. You protected the warmth, the hollow one said. Its voice echoed not in the air, but in Kale's mind. Why? Kale didn't answer right away. He looked down at his rifle, then at his hands, then he looked back up. Because she sang, he said. Even when the world forgot her, even when no one answered, she sang. The hollow ones paused. Then the leader stepped even closer. There is no purpose here, it said. There is only silence. Join us. Kale smiled. Just a little. You don't know humans very well, he said. He stepped forward too. Just one pace, then another. The two sides now only feet apart. Behind him, the ship's fuel cells began to blink red. Kale had triggered the overload the moment Lyra escaped. It wouldn't save him. But it would bury the hollow ones forever. Before I go, Kale said, there's something you need to hear. The hollow ones tilted their heads, curious, and then, softly, Kale began to sing. Not a song of war, not a song of sorrow, but her song, the lullaby. The one he had heard in the cave, the one the baby had calmed to, the one that had brought him through the storm. His voice was rough, imperfect, but strong. He sang each line slowly, and something strange happened. The hollow ones stopped moving. Their arms fell to their sides, their heads lifted, as if they remembered something lost long ago. One of them dropped its weapon, another blinked. For just a moment, their blue lights dimmed. A flicker of something else, memory, pain, peace. Kale kept singing, even as the fuel cells screamed louder, even as the fire lit behind the walls. He stood tall in the center of the storm. A single human voice breaking through centuries of silence. A reminder that not everything had to be forgotten. Then the light came, a flash of white and orange. The explosion shook the forest above. Snow fell from the trees. The wind paused, and the hollow ones were no more. Far away, Lyra reached the top of the cliff. She turned just in time to see the fire rise into the sky. She dropped to her knees, eyes full of tears. Not from sorrow alone, but from something deeper, honor. She looked up where the pot had vanished. She whispered the lullaby again. This time, for Kale, high above the clouds. In the warmth of the pod, the baby slept. A monitor blinked signs of life, strong and steady. The pod carried her toward a distant human station, where others would hear her story, where someone would ask, "Who saved you?" And maybe someday, someone would answer, "A man walked into the storm and sang a song."